Okay, in this little video I'm going to be continuing my demonstration for the Braids and Bands Yahoo list tutorial on the 8-loop spiral braid. It's the classic spiral braid notated in the 15th century braiding manuscript, loop braiding manuscripts. I'm going to be showing here how to make a divided 8-loop spiral braid. It's basically going to be 2 4-loop spirals done at the same time. I'm doing it at the top of the braid in order to form a loop. I've explained this in the written part of the photo tutorial. It's very important when you start, if you want this loop to join at the top, to make sure that the 2 loops that are on your index and middle finger are not the same loop. These are all doubled loops, but so they're all bent in the middle over that header cord. However, these 2 loops must not be the same loop, or I believe the buttonhole start will not, it will fall apart later. These 2 loops must not be the same loop. These 2 loops must not be the same loop on both hands. So these ends of the doubled loops must be, the other end of their loops must be on the lower fingers, and the same on the left hand. That's the best I can do to explain that right now. Okay, I'm going to try to demonstrate this without confusing myself. I haven't done this for quite a while. Once you get going, the sequence of moves becomes fairly automatic, but in the beginning, as I'm doing now, I might have to backtrack a little bit. Basically, the 2 upper fingers of both hands will interact, and the 2 lower fingers of both hands will interact in trading loops, and these will never mix. I will never be crossing from the upper 2 fingers down to the lower 2 fingers, and vice versa. So the upper fingers will braid their own braid, and the lower fingers will braid their own mini braid simultaneously, so that it's good for the 2 braids will be the same length, they'll be the same tension, the same number of cycles when you stop, or join them together, as I will. Okay, enough talking. The first move, I will just say 1, 2, 3, 4 for the 4 moves that are in each cycle. So 1. Now I'm doing the move. I've demonstrated this move before, so I'm not going to go super slowly for the move. 2. 3. And 4. That's the end of one cycle. The loops will have the colors will have all switched hands at this point. This is a point where it's actually somewhat helpful to take the header cord off. I'm not going to do that, but if you are doing this in your own home, you can. If you take the header cord off, you can now put this start over something. I like the bar of my C-clamp is what I use, and it tightens a bit better at the top in that case. I'm going to just force this tightening very hard here so that the join there will be nice and this is a nice way to start, because really there won't be any kind of interruption at the top as there is slightly with the other join. The other start I demonstrated, which I call a handshake loop start to a braid, where in that other start there's 2 bunches of loops that are linked around each other. Here there's no such link. It'll just flow from one side to the other. Okay. Starting again with the first move in the cycle. 1, 2, 3, and 4. You may notice the knots can be a slight impediment. You have to watch out when you're passing one knotted loop through another. Okay, 1, 2. Oh, that doesn't seem right. Let's see. 2. There we go. 3. And 4. Let me see how long my loop is at this point. That might be long enough, but I'm going to make it a bit longer. So here, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's good to check always to make sure that you haven't. It's quite easy to see if you've crossed by mistake from a set, the upper fingers to the lower fingers. It wouldn't be a nice divided braid. It would join up. So still divided. Let's see. Let's do one more cycle. 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm doing this a little faster than my other ones because I'm assuming that you would have looked at those first and practiced with those, the 6-loop, 4 and 6-loop versions. I just dropped my loop. There we go. Okay, now I'll join this up, and I'm also going to adjust. Hope I can do this without bumping the camera. Well, maybe I can't. If the camera weren't in the way, I might adjust it if, say, the lower of the 2 little mini braids had somehow grown a bit longer than the other one. I could move the header cord more to the center of the 2. If this were over the bar of my C-clamp, that just kind of adjusts itself. Okay, so now I'm going to join up the 2, the upper braid and the lower braid into one spiral, one cohesive 8-loop spiral. This is the classic 8-loop, the lace bend round of 8 bows in the old manuscripts. And for this braid, you are going to be, upper fingers will exchange loops with lower fingers and vice versa. These will be the loop exchange pairs. These 2 fingers will always exchange their loops. These 2 fingers next, these 2 fingers, and these 2 fingers. Those pairs of loops only exchange with each other. They never exchange, they will continually go back and forth between their partners in these moves, which you need to know when you make these striped or other color setups for this braid. You need to be aware of which 2 fingers are the pair that always exchange their loops. If these 2 fingers had one color of loop, if they both had a green loop, you would get a green stripe, vertical stripe on either side of the braid, a narrow stripe. Okay, enough of that. Let's get going with the 8-loop spiral. 1, 2. I'm pulling somewhat harder to join those 2 together. 3. And 4. 1. 2. 3, pulling firmly, and 4. I'm going to park my loops now and look at how the join is working. It's always good to do a little quality control check at this point. You wouldn't have to take yours off. I see it seems to be knitting together pretty evenly and nicely. There's the loop, and there's the join. Put that back. will probably be cut at some, here's one, at some point when I run out of time, 2, 3, 4, oops, dropped my loop. There's that knot getting caught again. To check whether your loops are correct, like say I had gotten that very twisted, you just backtrack and undo. I mean, that's one way, and I can see down there what my last 2 loops through were. That's very good. I look at the fell of the braid. It's very good to check that, in case that was the mistake, in case it wasn't the 2 that, that you should have done. I'm going to put the red loop back on the finger with a turn. It came off that finger with a turn. Put it back on, undoing the turn, and lift the previous loop over. That all went fine, and this red loop doesn't seem to have any terrible twists in it, so I'm just going to redo that move. There's the knot trying to catch and get it through. Okay, that must have been, looks like that was the last move of the cycle. I think this is a good point to stop before my 15 minutes runs out, so I'm going to park my loops and stop here.